What was the moment you realized, I can see why your ex broke up with you, to your current SO?
He told me he liked to do things out of spite. Example, his ex had a problem with the amount of he was consuming, and it was making her insecure after having gained a lot of weight after their second child and brain surgery. He said the second she left the house he'd start watching just to spite her. But he would have convos with her, according to him, where he told her he understood and wouldn't do it anymore and then just do it till she caught him again and fought over it. I realized I had told him my insecurity really early on. Guess who was being lied to and cheated on zany face out of spite? I guess.
He claimed his wife just wanted a divorce for no reason and wouldn't discuss it with him. It eventually became clear to me that he was combative, argumentative, and a perpetual blame shifter. Everything was always somehow my fault and no hill was too small to die on. The man could not be reasoned with or persuaded on anything and he always knew best, even when it came to things that I had degrees in. And then I understood why his wife had effectively ghosted him and just filed for divorce. He is now my ex, too.
Not my current, but my ex. He had domestic violence charges against him from his ex, but upon us getting to know each other, he showed me all the proof that she was lying. The case was thrown out by the judge and he was never formally prosecuted for it. I was 19, he was 24. I was naive and believed him. About 2 years into our relationship, he was driving and I was in the passenger seat. He was yelling at me over some weird delusion he had that I was cheating on him. I wasn't. He screamed, punched the wheel, and threatened to drive off the bridge we were on. Ooh, I get it.
Not my current but when he got mad at me for asking him to take the trash out. He had been unemployed for 3 months and gamed all day. Didn't clean or cook or help with, so he proceeded to slam his headset into the floor, throw the chair across the room, and was screaming at me that he wanted to finish his match. I just kept cooking dinner and ignored him, which him off more, so he said he hoped me and my unborn child would die. I cut it off right then and there. Been a little over a year now and haven't looked back. Wish I would have listened to his exes instead of being manipulated into thinking they were just bitter.
Haha, I love this. Had 2 kids. After a couple dates I hung out with his kids and him. He asked me to change one of the kids' diapers since he was bad at it. And because I'm nanny, and a girl, so I made me do 90% of the childcare that night.
After we broke up because his fear of commitment, I remembered how his ex wanted him to move in with his ex, was always yelling at him. How his ex was always trying to spend time with him. He was just afraid of commitment.
After we moved in together and he started rejecting me physically, even hugs. And I found myself doing everything. Then I was looking at his oldest screenshots that synced to a new iPad and saw a ton of screenshot arguments from years ago with his ex before me and her sound identical. I can see why she did what she did. She was a victim to his immaturity and arrogance too. I feel bad, and I also feel seen. And I guess sad to know he can't really change.
My current fiancé is a professional chef. He used to do restaurant work, which included changing jobs frequently, lots of late nights, and partying after work. He had no health insurance or retirement, and worked a lot of weekends. One of the reasons his ex broke up with him was because she didn't feel like he was a stable enough partner to have children with, and she wanted kids. She ended up leaving him for a co-worker of hers. 3 months after we started dating, he got a new job working as a corporate chef. He now basically works banker's hours with holidays and weekends off. He carries our health insurance, and makes almost twice as much money as I do. He wants to open his own restaurant one day, but only if he's in the financial position to do so. Honestly, if he hadn't switched jobs so early in our relationship, I 100% would have come to the same conclusion as she did. He also has ADHD, which drove his ex crazy, but only mildly annoys me. Fellow ADHDer over here.
His mom was always in our business and he was basically still on her. See why his ex estranged him from his family.
There were a lot. When he called me his other crush's name during maybe a fortnight in because he thought it was funny, yet told me I was overreacting for being hurt. When he blamed his father's death that happened 10 years prior for why he got violent with me. When he told me I walked into his foot when he kicked me full force in the stomach. The first should have been enough of a red flag. Hindsight is a beautiful thing.
She is spending the night Saturday night at my house. Her dog is there, we've had dinner and dessert, we're cuddling up watching a movie and I'm in heaven. She's gorgeous and I really loved her. Out of the blue, she says she's not having fun and she wants to go home. I'm as surprised as I can be. I ask her to clarify, she restates, I don't know what to say, my world is kind of shattered. We discuss it a bit more and then she says,
When he threw me out of the room because of fight. Instant light bulb.
My current so, bless his heart, will tell the same tired joke no matter how many times is said it in one day. I just smile and roll my eyes, but it's nowhere close to a deal breaker like his ex thought. That and she said he was too clingy. I love cuddling and keeping in touch a lot throughout the day, so I couldn't relate to that one.
My partner is on the spectrum and his ex left him because he didn't want to get married, and didn't really understand how to communicate about certain emotions. I am completely happy never getting married again. We own a house together, and when we talk about complicated feelings we use techniques we've both learned in individual therapy to break them down to simpler terms. Think emotion wheel. I love him dearly and I love all his quirks. I'd never want him to change. And now that we've been together a while and we get each other, our relationship is stronger than ever. Don't get me wrong though, being with someone on the spectrum takes time to adapt to and you need a lot of patience, practice, and understanding.
My dude is very quiet and introverted and does not open up easily. If you've read Akatar, he's basically Azrael Anyway, I gradually learned from him and others that he had only like 2 exes and they wanted him to open up more, which I do understand. However, they would do that by trying to provoke a reaction out of him. That meant saying or doing something that triggered him to anger or sadness or something. What he really needed was just patience and understanding. I get that they wanted to know more about him, but doing it that way can make someone clamp up into their shell even more. By the time we were dating, poor guy had like walls upon walls upon walls. We've worked through a lot and are very happy. I've gotten to see sides of him he hasn't let anyone see ever. He's beautiful and I'm proud of him.
We're not currently dating, but I remember this exact moment so clearly for my second to last relationship lol, so I felt like I should share. It was the first time we had a fight about something, like maybe 10 weeks into dating. IDR exactly what, but it was really just a dumb misunderstanding stemming from my often being bad at communicating unambiguously via text and amplified, originally, by the fact that I had extremely thin skin and low self-esteem at that time. Totally my fault it happened at all, but also something that could be resolved in a couple minutes if cooler heads managed to prevail. It started out low-key, like just a particularly stressful conversation, and slowly escalated as my apparently visibly building anxiety seemed to be like proportionately freaking him out. There was no screaming or anything, but the vibe was tense and both of us could have benefited from going into another room and doing some breathing exercises, because our minds were rapidly slipping into that sort of social fight or flight mode that immediately precedes an argument, and each of our sentences were less focused and productive than the one prior. At that point I started to notice how anxious I was getting, so to head off a panic attack I told him that and said that I'd need to go out on the patio for a couple minutes to get some fresh air and like center myself a little, and that I promised we'd untangle everything once I came back inside and we'd both had a minute to clear our heads. The patio was adjacent to the room where we'd been sitting and was connected by a sliding glass door. I was literally going to be directly in his line of sight the entire time if he chose to stay in the living room or even if he went to the kitchen, and in any case I didn't put on shoes or grab my keys or anything, so I definitely wasn't going anywhere. So I was loads better after like 5 to 7 minutes. With the sunlight and plants, I'd gotten much calmer and was quickly realizing how much a non-issue the original thing really was, and was even already starting to feel silly and embarrassed about letting myself get all worked up over nothing. So, when I walked back in, my demeanor was a lot more relaxed and my guard wasn't up anymore. But whereas before I'd stepped outside he just seemed like he was concerned for me more than anything, now he was refusing to make eye contact, answering in monosyllables, audibly sighing and scoffing, and eventually he just abruptly stood up and walked out of the room. I followed him into my bedroom, and after like 20 to 30 minutes, that started with asking him what happened and gradually devolved first into begging him to look at me and then just sobbing, he finally turned toward me and said that he doesn't respect people who leave arguments unfinished, and that, while he hadn't been upset with me at first, he'd become upset when I went outside. At this point I was completely mentally exhausted from the whole day, so I just did my best to empathize with what he was saying so I could understand his position and feelings well enough to offer a sincere apology for both the initial stuff and for going outside, which I did and which he accepted, but still stayed kinda icy for the rest of the night anyway. The next morning he was totally fine and normal, and revisiting it didn't seem worth potentially getting back into something unpleasant that soon after the previous afternoon, nights I just didn't say anything and focused on moving on. It turned out that arguments, or any kind of difficult conversations at all, were like death matches for him, where you just sit down and hash it out until it's done irrespective of how long that takes or what kind of state people end up in during the process. I assume there's a serious underlying reason for that, but the few times I tried asking him about it just seemed like they annoyed him and I got uniformly brushed off, so eventually I just dropped it and instead got really good at avoiding arguments by people pleasing and preemptively conceding to things, which was about as sustainable as it sounds. But yeah, anyway, that was it. The first fight was that moment. Maybe not enough of that moment since we dates for almost 6 more months, but still.